One of the reasons why I brought my baby today is because I wanted you guys to remember what it feels like to be teaching in our classes here with babies, and you thought I'd make it more an authentic experience. The focus of this training today is to promote in our classes authentic listening and speaking experience in a more limited time frame than what we've been working with. So we're actually going to, hopefully through the types of activities I'm going to introduce to you today, give you like increased effectiveness with decreased time. And that's the goal. And the way that we're going to do it today is I have a few different activities that we will use to discuss the training. And then you can take those activities back into your classroom. And for every activity, I'll have ways that you can modify it, usually down. But there's a level 0 and 1 kind of modification for it, a 2, and a 3 and 4. So for whichever level you're teaching, hopefully you'll be able to take what we do today and bring it into your classroom. For those of you who have been teaching with me for a while, there won't be a lot of new information, but since we have some new people, it will be. And then for those of you who are like, yeah, we know this, Allison, you suggested that before, maybe you'll get a new spin or a creative take. And if I don't address your questions, problems today, send me an email, like the one I sent to you earlier in the summer that so many people responded to.
I couldn't think of any questions during the summer.
Well, if you think of questions now,
She didn't even
write
bring
them
her
down.
purse today. I know we got to give her a break. Thanks.
If
Give me a
you
break.
think of them today and I don't address them, write them down, shoot them to me so that the next time we have a training, it can really be specifically toward what you need. And maybe they'll just be questions that come to you while you're teaching your classes and you're like, oh man, present perfect again, this always trips me up or whatever. And just send me an email and I'd be happy to use the resources that I have to help you guys. Okay? So, for our first activity, the topic here is about sharing opinions. This is one of the things we want our students to be able to do, is share opinions and express their opinions at any level, right? So, you guys have to stand up. Kinesthetic is a key thing in learning. You guys know this. So, for this activity, we're going to have two sides of the room. This side of the room is agree. This side of the room is disagree. When I read a statement, I would like you to walk to the side of the room that best expresses your thoughts on that statement. If you are a new teacher, you can just think about what you might do or what you might feel in that situation. Okay? I generally use the lesson plans in the book. Agree? Disagree?
In between.
No, you have to pick a side. Generally.
I can't remember. So which side's agree?
Agree?
Neither hot nor
Disagree.
cold.
Generally
Yeah.
agree.
This is the setup.
51%.
Use the lesson plans in the book. Okay.
I do, and I modify them.
All right. That's great. So, wow, that's very interesting. Most of you do. Okay?
No idea.
Question number 2. I spend a lot of my own time creating materials. Agree? Disagree?
A lot is very relative. I'm no good at these.
Yeah, what's a lot?
What's a lot?
More time than you spend in class. Or equal to the amount of time you spend in class.
Equal to.
Probably.
No.
Okay. So most people disagree.
Stand here.
I know, that's what I think. I'm like, I'm kind of on this side.
I hope it doesn't happen to you.
I know, yeah.
That's part of what this is about, so you don't have to do that, okay? Number 3. I find it difficult to explain why English is the way it is. Agree?
Yeah.
Disagree? Got our linguists over here. Okay. I need more variety in my lesson plan.
Is this going?
Agree? Disagree? I need more variety in my lesson
I
plan.
would stand here.
Yeah, I know it's hard for those of you who haven't started yet. Okay. Number 5, I feel confident that the students are learning. I feel confident, agree, disagree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Good, all right.
Yeah.
And number 6, I have time to teach what my students need to learn. Agree, disagree. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I would be halfway.
Yeah. Your class takes twice as long as the other ones. You do when you teach a class, like you do it twice in a term. Or like 2 terms. Okay, so I had you guys do these activities because one, I wanted to know, genuinely wanted to know the answers to those questions. And I'm pleased to see that you guys don't spend an exorbitant amount of time outside of class working on stuff for this, because you guys are volunteers and that's great and you shouldn't be stressed out about it. Yeah, and I'm glad that you feel confident that your students are learning. That's wonderful. Now part of this is that I have time to teach what my students need to learn. You might feel that way now, but you're losing a day, right? So because of that, I want to give you some more activities to use, right? Now this activity is good for all levels. If you're doing level 0, if you're doing level 0, you could just have yes and no. You don't have to use the words agree or disagree, right? But from the first or second week, you can yes or no. You can also do like a this or that kind of thing, coffee or tea, right? To practice vocabulary. So for our basic levels, just having those one-word kinds of answers. You could also have students hold if you don't want them to move for whatever reason. Maybe your class is really big. You can have little cards, right? You could have 2 different colored cards, a yes card and a no card, and just have students hold them up so that they can see, you can see, like, are they getting this or not, right? As you move up to the levels, you could add modifiers. So you could have 4 corners. You can have strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And have the statements, of course, be topical to the unit that you're teaching, right? Whether it's forms of politeness or work, job interview stuff, whatever the topic is, have them have more choices. And in levels 3 and level 4, you can also make it a more collaborative activity by having students try to convince their classmates to move, right? So they get together on their agree side or their disagree side, create some convincing arguments, and then see if they can get people to change their mind. I've done this with refugee kids, and it works well. So there's no reason why their parents would be any different in liking to try to be persuasive, right? So that's a kind of activity you can get students moving, you can visually see what they think about whatever it is, and you can get them to communicate with each other. With our lower level students, we're not always trying to get them to produce, but we want to know if they understand. And nonverbal communication is one way that we can assess that. Does anybody have any questions on that activity? I will also email this out to everybody, so if you are furiously taking notes, it's not necessary. Okay.
I like it.
Yes, I am.
Then take notes away. It'll help you learn. I just don't want you to think that if you miss something that you're not gonna get it. Okay? All right. So that's one way we can get our students to practice sharing opinions at any level. Another thing that we want them to be able to share is not just their opinions, but their ideas. They're creative people. They are people with a variety of backgrounds and experiences, right? So what I would like us to do, and one of the things that we want our students to be able to do, is brainstorm as a group. So we're going to do a brainstorming activity, and for us it's going to be about school goals. For those of you that are new to the school, I'm sure you can still participate in this. So one of our goals is to maximize this 3-hour day that we're going to have, right? And we want to emphasize authentic communication, right? A lot of the materials in the book, and one of the reasons why I wanted to, yes?
What do you mean by authentic?
That's what I'm going to explain.
Okay.
So a lot of the materials in the book are kind of created for, they're like textbook class stuff. Hello, how are you? I am fine, thank you. How are you? Right? And these kind of fake conversations that we don't actually have. Right? We don't talk like textbooks unless we're being very, very careful with our speech and we know we're talking to a low-level learner, right? So we want to emphasize authentic, spontaneous communication. We want them to, with their listening, be able to recognize and understand real conversations, real radio ads, real television talk. them listening to a CD that's, how do you get to Main Street? First, go straight, right? Those are helpful and they're useful at the beginning, but they're not authentic. And so if they have learned how to give directions or how to receive directions and then go on the street and hear uhs and ums and kind of this natural way we talk, I was telling Janet earlier not to change her accent too much, because then when she's naturally talking, they won't understand if she changes every cont to can't, right? So we want them to be able to, and authentic communications is out in the real world and not in the class. So we have to bring that authentic communication into our classes. We're not a college. So the focus on academic texts and quotation marks and things like that, well, not bad. We just don't have time for them. We don't have time. We have to focus on listening and speaking and engaging, them being able to engage in their world with their neighbors at the supermarket, etc. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you see, because I'm trying to wrap my head around the classroom without the board work, and because you said you don't want so much reading and writing, which was...
It's not that I don't want it. It's that we have to emphasize the listening and speaking. And for our students, once they have the listening and speaking, like, they can do the reading and writing on their own. They have the advantage of being here with you with a native speaker. They have the advantage of being here with a native speaker. So we want to take advantage of that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because when they go home, they're not going to be around probably a lot of native speakers. So we're going to focus on that verbal communication here. Not because we don't care about reading or writing, but if we have to choose, that's what I'm going to choose. Because that's what our school is about, is that we're a community. We're relationship building. We're not giving grades, right? So the more academic little pieces, while not important, they kind of are going to be pushed to the side a little bit to make room for communication.
So when they finish here, and if they go to Richland College, that's what they're getting, correct?
At Richland College, they would get the academic.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand.
Yeah. So I have thought of a couple different ways that we can bring authentic communication into the class. So one way is making room by giving more homework, regardless of level. Now, I know not every student may be able to complete it, but we want to make some of those reading and writing or those kind of grammar-oriented things in the book more homework. I'm not saying don't teach them, but get the basics and have them practice it on their own. And because we're doing this every other day kind of thing, that gives them a day in between to really focus on it, and you can come back on that second day and review and check and get the places that they missed, but still focusing on communication. Does that make sense? Okay, stop me if it doesn't. Other things is doing kinesthetic work, visual lessons. If you guys have ever seen my class, you've seen me moving my arms and dancing around like a crazy person all the time, because especially in our lower levels, abstract concepts aren't going to come. You have to do the here and now first. They have to understand that this is a table before you can talk about what you did last week, right? So we want to do a lot of kinesthetic learning, a lot of visual learning, to reduce the need on that reading piece. We'll talk about literacy later. Blah, blah, blah. There's no reason to practice things they already understand. That's another key point. I have had this experience where I planned 30 minutes or 45 minutes, we're going to do colors. And all the students already know colors for some reason. That's a waste of time to teach something they already know. You guys will get to know your students. You'll see what they know and don't know. You know that there's different levels within any one level. But there's no reason to spend time teaching something that they already get. So just keep that in mind, whether it's reviewing something from the previous level or just maybe there's a similarity between Farsi and English or Arabic and English, and it's like, well, that's just the same as English. I found that studying Farsi, I go, oh, I don't need to study where that goes because that's just the same, right? So why practice something I already know, right? That doesn't do us any good. So you're going to want to focus on the things that are the most difficult because that's where they're going to need your help, not the things that are easy for them. So what I'd love for you guys to do is take a minute to talk with the person next to you and let's do 5 minutes, I guess, and see what are some other ways that you could save time in the classroom, that you could maximize your time. What kind, I don't know, that's okay, just talk. See if you can come up with them. I just want to know if you guys have any other ideas that I missed. And I'm going to go check on my baby.
Okay, because this is throwing me. This is throwing me because, are we still going to require them to have books?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because the books are.
My vast experience, or maybe it's my
Yeah,
half.
so she's saying like stuff that, whatever.
We did, talking about,
Yeah, writing,
what do you
yeah,
do
like,
if you
save that
have
for
to
later.
interact with the police?
Okay.
Because
Yeah, just more conversation in
idea.
teaching present perfect or
Yeah, so they don't even have to know those terms, as
Okay,
long as they can use it.
yep, okay.
But some of them want the terms, and that helps. One thing I just thought of, one thing I found, a big part of our
It
language
was
is
improv.
prefixes.
But
Prefixes are really, like, we
rather
use
than,
them
we
a
can talk
lot.
about that all day long, but, you
Forming
know,
words.
keep your
That's
hands where
really
you can see.
So I
Don't
did
do anything
Google,
until after.
Talk about the police, that was very good.
In a very basic class, all men, very low level.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about was how to handle yourself if you were stopped by the police. And we talked about it,
Yeah.
and then we acted it out. Two
Cool.
of the teachers acted it out.
I like that. And you know, it's kind of, I like that you brought up something that would actually possibly occur,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, for example, in the basic book when it's talking about chores. One of the chores is walk the dog.
Yeah.
Is that necessary for them
No.
to know? Not really. Like, that's not something we need to spend a lot of time on because they don't have dogs. But interacting with the police, right? So that's a perfect, so acting out a real life situation, looking at your curriculum and going, what here do they need to know for their lives? And making those choices will get rid of the things that are sucking up some of their time. Like that. Any? We don't.
Money. I do money with my class, and
Okay.
I have things that they can buy. I give them, you know, well, what if this was, and you had this much in your account, and we go back into the account, why you have to have it. And we have a whole big talking about it, and they can come up to the board. I try to have my students come up to the board as much as possible
Okay.
to put their ideas up there.
Okay. So doing what we're doing now, basically,
Yes.
but with the students, having them brainstorm and using in your classroom another real life.
Yes,
Using
and I have
them.
them bring money those couple days. And
Okay.
we have real money,
Right.
because I've tried with the fake money and they just, it doesn't work. So we bring real money and we,
Okay. So you're talking about using authentic materials.
yes.
All right. Esther?
What about Ron?
Huh? Oh, sorry. Not everybody has to go.
All right.
Just whoever wants to.
From this class I took online, I got the idea of deductive reasoning and doing those kind of activities. One of the things I've taught them about is prefixes, because it's such a big part of our language. That you can really figure out words by knowing these. And so this morning I came up with, with the idea of making it homework. Saying, for example, write RE on the board and say, okay, your assignment is when you're on your way home, and when you're at home, any English reading material you have, look at it. Anytime you can see the prefix re, write down those words where you see it. And
Mhm.
tomorrow, and then come with your ideas. What do you think it means?
Very good.
And
I like that.
then we talk about it.
I love that. Using deductive reasoning to teach grammar and vocabulary is going to be a lot more effective than the sort of, here's what re means, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to then, they're using their brains to make those connections, and it's going to stick.
So
A lot
what's
better.
deductive reasoning?
It's,
You start
Looking-
with the small.
so, yeah,
Okay.
looking at all the examples and figuring out what's the rule,
Oh,
not
yes,
giving students
yes,
the rule, and then
Yeah.
what example. Because the problem is with English, of course, there's always exceptions to any
Oh,
rule.
yeah.
So,
Which is
using,
why they might come with the word real, for example.
Right.
Okay, that's not a prefix in this case, and
Right,
talk about
exactly.
the syllables and whatever.
That's a great example.
Okay, I knew that wasn't stupid. I feel so
This way, not this way.
Oh, you
That
are,
class
Janet.
I
This way,
recommended.
Linda.
Yes.
This would be
Yeah,
that-
we get to.
I could never keep it
I
straight.
don't know.
I think we-
Well,
Maybe,
no,
maybe
I
we'll
don't
look
know.
it up later.
It's got prefixes.
She used the word
think that's what it is,
deductive.
But I could be wrong because I always get them mixed up too.
Oh, yeah.
Some kind of
Sorry.
octave reasoning. All right,
Thank you.
That's
octave.
good.
Any, do either of you guys want to share?
Applications.
Okay,
I think we need to know and be stressed how to fill out applications.
Oh,
Yes.
Fill out forms in
Yep.
general.
Forms in
forms,
general,
yeah.
name,
Yeah.
address, telephone number.
Absolutely.
yep,
Also, another thing we stressed over and over again in our class is how to make a 911 call.
Oh,
very good. So
Yeah,
this
we
is the
did that
real
too.
life situations, police. So you guys, a lot of y'all are skirting around the bulk of my thing today, which is using authentic, in real life, authentic communication. Did either of you guys, the ones, the two that don't have a class yet? Hmm?
No, I was looking forward to listening. Do you have one?
No
The
worries.
thing I got from our online course was total physical response.
Yes.
And if you're teaching a child what an orange is, they feel it, they see it, they taste it, and they smell it.
It's called TPR.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that more. Great. Thank you guys. You did all my work for me. So brainstorming is something that you can use in your classrooms as well, right? As you're talking extemporaneously, right? You're coming up with ideas, you're thinking about what the teacher's saying, and you're adding, and you're contributing to the classroom. In levels 0 and 1, you could keep it very simple. Who can tell me things in this room? Or things in another room, right? Or types of jobs, or animals, right? Kind of teaching them categories and seeing as they say the easy ones and maybe everybody knows, and then maybe the more advanced student says something and they're like, oh, what's that? And you get out the picture dictionary or the Google images to be like, it's this. And then they've learned a new word, but it didn't come from you, it came from their classmate. That's a good way to promote communication. In level 2, a way you could do this, which I'm sure you probably are already doing, is you have giving advice as one of your one of the things in your curriculum, is brainstorming different types of advice, right? I have a fever, or my neighbors are noisy. I'm sure you're already doing that, but brainstorming something like that. And then for levels 3 and 4, you could have them brainstorm, for example, cultural differences, right? Pick some kind of cultural topic in our society and have them compare and contrast and see if they can figure out, like, you know, what's similar in our society, what's different, whether it's clothes or food or any kind of social norm.
We talk marriage and all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So brainstorming and having the students provide the information for the class is going to make it a lot more interesting for them and more participatory. So we've talked about sharing opinions, sharing ideas. The next one is practicing turn-taking, practicing conversation. Who taught one of the conversation groups in the spring? Just you? And okay.
So you've been practicing what?
Turn-taking and conversational practice. So this is from that conversation class, but it's something that you can do, once again, in every level. And it's conversation baggies. And if you've been in my class, then you know that I do this all the time. And you can do it in small groups, or you can do it as the whole class. So what we would do is, and we'll just do a couple. Samira, did you want me to be done by noon? Is that?
Whenever you're done.
Okay, well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Yeah, you told me an hour and a half, so.
I did.
But we didn't start exactly at 10:30.
That's true
So
also.
just ask the group if it would be okay if we go a little bit over if you need to.
Okay, well, we'll just do it just because I made it. So what you can do is either, you can have this, in your higher level, you can have the students create the questions themselves. And then in the middle levels, you can kind of be more of the guide. And then for the basic level, it can just be pictures even. Doesn't matter what it is. And you would definitely want to model this activity the first time, but once they get it, they should be able to do it because it's the same structure every time, right? Brainstorming is the same structure every time. Agree and disagree is the same structure every time. Once they understand the structure of an activity, they can then reapply it to whatever you're doing at that time. So let's have, why don't you grab a question?
That's it.
Yeah. One of y'all. There's only 5 or 6, so we'll just do a couple of them.
Whoever.
Okay.
Who are the authors?
I don't have enough experience to answer that.
Then trade.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you could have this be the question depending on your time constraints, where the person
Depends on
who
the letter.
draws it is the only one who answers it, or you could have the person who draws it is asking it to the group, right? So there's 2 different ways to do that. But let's just have the person who drew it be the one that answers it, just for time's sake. So what question do you have?
I have a confused idea of the
Okay.
answer.
All
But
right.
the question is, what topic do your students usually get right away?
Can you think of something in level 2 that came easy for them? Yeah.
I know there are, I'm trying to think.
Our brains have been on,
There were a couple of days, but it was not common. It was not common. Partly
Okay.
because level 2, we were working with so many different levels of understanding. I mean,
There was a
the
gap.
range was quite large.
I see.
So even when 2 or 3 or even 4 students would get it, we'd have half a dozen who didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and that's totally acceptable, right? It doesn't have to. I did one with a blank that was meant to be an easier STEM instead of it being an open-ended question. But I guess that was too hard. It is. I mean, I can tell you that for my class, students usually get prepositions right away because they're attached with all of these little motions. They learn them
And that's
quickly.
beautiful, yes.
Oh, that is good. Over, under, in.
Yeah, there's like a series of them
Yeah, we
through.
Yeah.
Around.
Nobody leaves Gateway Bridge without knowing on, under.
In, out.
Yeah.
You do them all.
Yeah, you're right. Those were surprisingly.
Who else had a question? One of y'all?
why do you love teaching at Gateway? I learn probably more than they do. And not just academic stuff. I just, it's just opened up a whole new world. So,
Anybody else want to share why they love teaching at Gateway?
I think because it's a two-way thing. You know, it's like, because, and I guess that's the same thing, it's kind of like learning from, but it's also just, it's such a gift to be able to have the opportunity to do this, to be in a position where you can share your language and hopefully make their transition a little bit easier.
and I like the friendships.
Yes.
Because I taught
yes.
in public school and you don't
Yeah.
have time.
I like the community of us and
Yes.
students, and we all feel we're all part of it,
Yeah.
whether we're teaching or we're learning or the kids are screaming or whatever's going on. We're all in it together because we're all similar. We're all.
One thing, one thing I really like is that we have a break time when we get to talk to each other and get to know
Yes.
each other, where if we didn't have that, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And besides all that they said, I like it when somebody says, well, what do you do? And I can say, I help at Gateway of Grace, and this is my experience. And I see them just kind of, wow, that sounds, it's like a one-on-one. I have experienced these people, and I can tell you how rewarding it is and how much I get from them. So it's not only what I get out of it, but when somebody says, what do you do in your spare time? I volunteer, and this is, and it's like, oh, maybe they become aware of
Yes.
an opportunity or an openness, or maybe I should reach out.
That's why it feels like such a privilege to be able to be part of this.
Yeah.
For us. Yes.
Next question.
I had, when I studied a second language, the most difficult thing for me was, for me, it was definitely about speaking. Like, I could sit in a classroom and take the notes and read and highlight and make lists, but when I actually had to speak it, and I did this with French, with Spanish, with sign language, it's when I actually have to answer out loud, that's when I really became incredibly self-conscious and couldn't do it.
I'm so glad you said that, because the reason I put that question in there is because I had the exact same experience with learning French, and honestly, like most things that I've studied, it's very easy for me to like, even in France, to like go to a museum and read the little placard that tells you what this thing is. But in a restaurant, I just freeze out.
I will go to English, I won't go to,
Yeah.
even though I know the please and the thank you, and even the basic things, I still feel,
Intimidated?
I feel intimidated like I'm going to be judged.
Exactly.
If I say it
Well,
wrong.
especially with French, you know.
Yes. And in English.
I say that as a
in Paris, yeah.
You say that.
granddaughter of French migrants.
Yeah.
But so that is one of the reasons why, once again, that we're removing the focus on reading and writing. It's not that it's not important, but it's that it's a lot easier to know the right answers, to circle the things, to spell everything correctly. It's easy to study that way, but that's not what they need. They need to survive, and they need to communicate. And we can worry about the academic stuff if they go down that path, but we want them to be able to complete these tasks. So, and that's what we want, is like, you know, that relationship building. And if you've achieved that level of communication in, like, I know that you're Arabic, or who else here is pretty fluent in something? Back here, we've got some. But if you've achieved the level where you can build a friendship, where you can have a relationship, that's really why you're learning the language in the first place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and especially with some of our students coming from non-literate backgrounds, learning to read and write is not even remotely on the plan, right? We've got to get communication first. So, thanks for bringing that up. Did you have one, Mary?
What lesson that you teach or have taught is your favorite? I like the lessons that Janet and I do where we have lots of props and get everybody involved.
The body ones are always good.
The body ones are good, or when we do money, we've got groceries and things they buy. When we do weights, we bring in all the measuring cups. When we do,
Probably clothing.
And body we bring in because you deal with the cut and the bruise, and so I basically bring my medicine cabinet in and go bandage, and because again, who wants to see a picture of a band-aid when I can say here's the band-aid, and actually that really gets the students involved because they want to see. I say this is what I use.
Yeah.
This is for this, and because that's what you need to know when you're going shopping, and you need to know what
if you're
things
looking
are.
at Janet and I's class, we're usually showing something or pantomiming something or jumping across the room or doing something. So I think the more props we have and the more we make it.
It's fun for us as well.
Yeah, we have a good time.
Ones where
And
you
they
have
get
fun.
engaged when they see us bringing things out of bags.
So authentic.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. You're catching on to my theme.
So the only thing that's concerning me a little bit is that I'm aware that clearly we need to focus on the spoken and the conversation,
Yes.
but they still have to be at a level of reading and writing to send up to Esther's class.
Right. So one of the things that we're going to really be working on is in Emily's class, we're going to be focusing on literacy. They should. So my plan is that students who are a 0 in speaking but have a background in English literacy will just start in 1. Because if they can read anything, they should be able to cut it.
Yeah.
Your class is basically just a slightly expanded version of this one in terms of what grammar and vocabulary is taught. So if they can read, they'll be in your class.
Right.
And so if they can, then they should be ready to move up to Esther's class.
Yes.
And the ones who don't have those literacy skills will be in here, building those literacy skills alongside the speaking skills. So this class is really going to be half and half, literacy and speaking, because of the way, the structure that we have, the books that we have, we can't teach classes purely without any books or reading at all. So they're going to have to get it. And so they shouldn't move up to here until they've gotten.
They can read some basic reading and writing, and then it's just a case of us still trying to build it to that level where we're handing us the
And of course, having students redo a level is totally acceptable.
Yeah.
All right, did I get your question? Yes. Last question.
Right. The most difficult thing for me to teach is I'm new, so
Everything.
everything.
I'll answer for you. Do and does makes, third person S, I go, you go, he goes.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. All right, but anyway, these little baggies, there are things that you can use in your class to promote conversation. We actually just had a real conversation here with just my facilitating, moving from paper to paper. That's great. And pretty much everybody popped in and had something to say, which is also good. So there's some ways you can modify it. The lower levels are probably already familiar with this, but with the Ventures curriculum come these little paper cards that you can cut out and you can trade. So maybe I have one and you have one, and I say, what lesson that you teach or have taught is your favorite? And you answer, and then you would read me the question, and I would answer, and we say, thank you, and trade papers. Now I have a new question, and I find a new person, right? That way they're constantly changing. Did what I just say make sense?
Mhm.
Susan, you look confused.
So do I, still a little, do I teach grammar through this conversation stuff like present perfect, verb usage? I mean,
It would
I
be,
don't get into that.
I
I mean, I have to, because for them to speak, they have to use.
Yeah. So what I would probably do in your position is start out introducing the present perfect by giving them authentic communication with it in it, and have them hear it,
Okay.
and then you can say, okay, what's this thing that you just heard? Right? So maybe you have a dialogue of some kind that they hear, and within it is the present perfect. How long have you lived in the United States, right? And then you're like, what does this have? You don't have lived, right? You don't have it. So what is this, right? And then you can tell them, and you can, draw on the board the little timeline with the present and the past, and what I'm talking about there. So, but introducing it first through authentic communication before teaching before saying, okay, we're going to learn the present perfect tense.
Okay, because this is making me grow. This is getting me out of my little comfort zone. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So it's all
Yeah.
good.
So, but the students have heard, for example, in present, they've heard, how long have you been here since level 0? Because it's impossible for us to ask them that question any other way.
Yeah.
So that's a really good way to introduce that particular thing. And if you can think of the natural places where each tense appears in our conversation little norms, you can use that. Like, would you like, for example, is great for modals, because it's what you would do at a restaurant, and you could teach them, you could model the ordering something, and then talk about the grammar point of
Or even more common, in your house, you're hosting, your
exactly
guests, yeah, would you like that?
hospitality.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they love that, they want to be polite, so they love learning how to.
Exactly. Great. So level 0, you could use pictures. So having maybe different things in the home, right? Level 1, 2, a television, a sofa, right? Different things. Do you have with the picture? So all they have to memorize is the spoken part. Do you have a object? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Do you have an object? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Thank you. Trade, new person. And they just have that picture. So our students with low literacy skills aren't struggling to read instead of practicing what they're supposed to be practicing, right? And then obviously as our students get more literate, you can do what I did here with just slips of paper. But using pictures for that activity is good. Obviously, like the higher level, the more open-ended questions you can add. You can add whys, talk about a time when, right? Like make them very broad. Here in the center, you guys kind of more yes, no, or simple answer kind of questions to practice that question formation. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Now I want to spend some time focusing on, oh gosh, I really thought there were going to be 6 people, so you guys can share, I want to focus on activities to specifically promote authentic listening. You do have the CDs with the books, and those are fine. Those are good if you want to review that vocabulary or you want to do a specific thing. But like I said, that's not what their people talk like out here. So, I am going to read to you guys a paragraph, and and I want you to circle the words that you hear me say. All right?
Not sure what authentic listening is.
I'm going to work on that for you.
Maybe I do have enough.
Whoops.
Harder words than I expected.
Hmm?
Harder words than I expected.
Well, that's because you guys are all native English speakers. I'll tell you how to modify it down. Yeah. No. All right, so making listening more authentic. Language is a constantly developing form, and when we listen in our native language, we still hear words that are new to us or that we may not fully understand. This doesn't, however, lead us to check lists of unknown words in dictionaries or learn word lists before we listen. We have evolved a process of deducing the meaning of new words. This is a process we also need to develop in our students. By constantly pre-teaching and preparing students, we are undermining the development of this process. Students need to be challenged and to struggle to find meaning for themselves with our guidance and support in order to develop this ability. To make this happen, we need to do less pre-teaching and more developmental and post-listening work so that students first listening to a text is as close as possible to an authentic experience. We can then use this first listening experience diagnostically to assess the problems that they are having and what we need to do to overcome those problems. We can also gauge the degree to which they are succeeding with their listening and build on this.
What did you just say?
Actually, that was very good.
I'll email this out to you as well.
Yes, so I was
What it was
focusing on
saying
the
is-
words.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I was
I did that. I was having focusing on the words because my thought was if you wanted to introduce difficult vocabulary, the first things that students need to be able to do is hear what are the words I don't know in this sentence, right? So then, once they've circled them and you've assessed, okay, yeah, these are the ones that we heard, you could read it again, which we're not going to do, and see if they can tell from the context, what does this word mean?
Okay.
Right? We want them to be able to use context clues as they're listening, right? And this is a difficult passage. I wanted you guys to experience that. What is Allison saying right now?
Oh, you
No, I did.
succeeded.
But good. But if you didn't know a word in there, you would, as a native speaker, be able to figure out what that word probably meant. Or you could ask later, right, if you could pinpoint what the word was. So now, this is just one type of listening thing. You could do it with a video. You could do it with pictures. You could read something very short, a story, and have content words, like the pictures of the characters in the story or whatever, as when you hear that, circle that picture. That shows comprehension without any production, right? But what this basically says is that we, as native speakers, hear words we don't understand, but we don't go look them up in a dictionary. We use context clues to figure out and guess what they might mean.
And in public school, they have a hard time getting the readers to do that.
Yes,
The context clues.
it's reading and it's listening. It's both.
Okay.
That idea of context clues is in any kind of comprehension, right? And so what this author is recommending is that instead of saying, we're going to watch a video and here's what it's about and here are all the words you're going to hear, here's this natural experience that is as close as possible to what you would experience out on the street. Now let's go back. What did you understand in this? Right? What did you get? What words? And then, okay, what didn't we get? Let's fill in those holes. Let's see, where was the student's loss? Was it that they didn't know the meanings of the words? Was it that the sentences were too complex? Was it you spoke too fast or too slow or whatever? Right? So there's a lot of different causes for listening miscomprehension. But we can't figure out what they are if we tell them everything they're going to hear before they hear it.
So when we do for example, the true stories, the monkey
Yeah.
and the bus and all that business.
Yeah.
So the way I've done it in the past is we've got the picture, and I always
Yes.
get them to tell me what do you see in the picture.
Yes,
And
that's
put
what
all
I do
those
too.
words up,
Right.
so they've got a context before
Right.
we read the story.
The reason we're doing that is because we're trying to, they can understand the story if you read it to them.
Yes.
We're trying to get them to learn how to read those words.
Yes.
It's not a meaning thing, it's
Right.
a literacy practice.
Yes.
That's very different from a meaning
Yeah.
thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So keep doing those that way. Yeah, this is all about listening. So, and for every listening activity that you do, you want to think about what is the purpose of that activity and what is a possible task that they could actually do in real life, right? So if you're listening to a lecture, the purpose of listening to a lecture isn't just to listen to it, it's to gather information, right? You're looking for some information. And something you would do with that listening is maybe take notes or write an essay or create something based on that. If you are listening to a plane announcement, the next flight leaving is at 5:15 at gate 438, figure out where is that place on the airport map, right? So we want to think about, if you're listening to the news, the purpose is to be informed about current affairs, and the task you could do with it is to express an opinion about that current information. Listening to somebody's anecdote, the purpose is social interaction, but the task could maybe be to give advice or to express condolences or whatever. We want to think about everything of what they can do. What is the task? What are they going to be able to do with this? Because nobody just listens just to listen. Even here, you guys are listening to me, but you're listening with a purpose, which is to learn more about ESL, and then with the task to go and improve your classroom lessons, right? So we want to give our students the same purpose and the same task. We want them to see every activity that we're doing has value and is relevant to them, unlike walking the dog. Right? Okay. Questions about that? Just some other listening activities that I came up with. Some of you guys probably already do this, but student interviews with their classmates or with you or with a guest. Bringing in somebody they haven't spoken to before is very helpful. They get real used to our voices.
And that's why they don't want to move up.
And that's why they don't want to go up, because I understand that teacher,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So bringing in people to practice. You mentioned, Linda, you mentioned TPR, total physical response. Even if the students are not at production, they can show that they understand by touching, pointing, circling, obeying, stand up, sit down, touch your head, right? All of these things, if I say, students, touch your nose. Do it. Touch your nose. Touch your nose. Until you do it, I think you don't understand. But if you do it, I know you understand. So it doesn't necessarily mean they have to talk to show that they have listening comprehension, right? I already said bring a guest. And then also using authentic materials like television, YouTube, music, radio, any kind of, I've even done this before where I've sat down with my husband and we wrote a little dialogue and we read it together on the phone and then play it for the class and they have to figure out what we were talking about, right? So you can use any kind of authentic materials. Yeah? All right. We are approaching the end. All right, we're good. We're going to go a little bit over. Is that okay? I've got two more big sections, but we're making progress. All right. So that was promoting listening. Blah, 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 blah. That was promoting listening. I want to move on to promoting production. They've got to understand before they can produce. I mean, that is logical, right? So once we've gotten some comprehension, we're going to move to production. So I'm going to show you guys a video clip. Have the lights off, please. Julian is being so good.
He's asleep.
You guys have seen this movie, yes? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a classic.
Okay.
So that was a dysfunctional classroom, correct?
Yeah.
So take a minute to discuss with your neighbor. What about it was dysfunctional, right? Like 3 or 4 things. Yeah, the myriad of things that you could write. What was dysfunctional about it? Go.
Teacher.
Yeah, but they knew he was going to eventually tell them, so they didn't
There was no engagement. You didn't find ways
His
to
voice was very monotone,
elicit responses.
very boring.
Wasn't even paying attention to students.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think there was any eye
He
contact.
had no
Yeah,
interest in
he's
what he
very
was saying.
Although,
One guess that.
Well, that would be the take, if you were that one of those students,
You think?
he had no passion.
There's between men and women.
Yeah, so
okay, okay.
yeah, it was like a tip.
When I'm on stage,
Okay, I guess.
but yeah, what I'm saying about this, that.
I
good.
think
It
I've
wasn't at all catching the nonverbal
Are we good?
cues that-
All right, just for sake of time, can somebody just go ahead and call out, what are some improvements he could make or some areas he's failing in?
It could not be a monotone.
Okay,
voice.
so the monotone. So in a positive way, we would say that that would be what? Enthusiasm?
Yes.
Enthusiasm. I would go with 5. Okay, anybody else?
Engage with the students.
Right, so, yeah, we'll just write the positive ones. He needs to engage.
Yeah.
Right? He's obviously not really communicating.
Even pay attention to the students. See, he was altogether wrapped up in his own speech.
Speech. Okay.
Maybe some animation, just some movement.
Yeah, movement.
Eye
Right.
contact.
I mean, he says raised or lowered. I mean, you could at least do this. I don't think I can talk without moving my arms. Otherwise,
Every question was exactly the same,
okay,
in form, not in content.
okay, yeah. So question diversity,
Yeah,
and maybe, in my own opinion, not answering his own questions.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't have to answer because they knew he was going to.
Right, which isn't really a question at that point. Anybody else? That's fine. So how can we use that video in class? I've actually used that video every single term I've taught. And I use it to teach the word bored. When I'm teaching emotions, happy and sad and
Oh, that's
hungry,
good.
da. It's really easy to teach those. And then bored is very difficult. You
Yeah.
can't just show a picture of somebody bored. Are they sleepy? Are they what? But you watch that, they all know the word bored now, right? So you can use a video to teach a very simple word. At a level 1, you could watch that video and you could watch it a couple times and say, what are they doing? The teacher is talking, the student is chewing gum, that student is asleep. This student, you can use the video, he's wearing glasses, right? Even at level 0, you can just say glasses, teacher, desk, student, gum, right? Just showing that visual and having them say what they see, right? As you move up to level 2, you've got past tense. You could watch the video and then ask, what did you see? The teacher talked, they slept, and have them answer the question in the past tense. So you're using authentic communication, but you're practicing a past tense construction, right? For level 3 and 4, you can evaluate, right? You can say like, what is that teacher doing? What we did just now? What is he doing wrong? Is this more like the education in your country, right? How does his class compare to our class, right? We can do a lot of different types of conversation, starting a vocabulary building from videos. And that's just one video, right? And there's 4 different activities that we can do with 1 minute from Ferris Bueller. But there are a million videos online that you can use. I recommend if you can find silent videos, like art films, with no dialogue, that makes it even easier because then it doesn't matter if the students and you are talking over it as you watch it. You can make it fit any need that you have. Cartoons are another thing that you can use. There are some cartoons that, once again, have no dialogue. So other ways that you can use videos, apart from the things I just shared, you can watch a video clip, not like this one, because that one there wouldn't be anything next. But you could pause a video at a dramatic point and say, what do you think will happen next? You can practice the future, right? What's gonna happen, right? I think he will blah, or I think he's going to blank, right? You could watch a video that has dialogue on silent and have the students invent the dialogue, right? Have them pretend like what's happening right now and see if they can, you see somebody shaking hands, hi, how are you? Like have them watch it a few times and invent their own dialogue for the video, maybe even perform it for their classmates, right?
that's an old theatrical improv trick.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was thinking about taking an improv class. Hasn't happened yet. Somebody makes it hard to go out and do things. Another way you can have students practice production is having them explain how to do a task. Okay, we're off videos now because you're all like, well, what if I don't have my laptop? Okay, so some other non-video related things to do. Have them explain how to do a task. When I was teaching level 1, 2-ish, I was like, can you teach me how to make one of your dishes? Right? That uses a lot of different types of vocabulary. It uses food, it uses measurements, it uses time, right? There's a lot of, and a bunch of different verbs. There's a lot of things you could do with like a how-to kind of activity. And
Well-
even simple how-to activities like, how do you make a sandwich? Open the bag, take out the bread, blah, blah, right? You're using a lot of words. You said
Okay.
well.
Well, you did that in level 1, and we did that last summer where we
Yes.
made like potato salad, and we had the bowl, and we had
Yes.
everything. So that would be, you could have a kitchen thing and go all kinds of ways with that. Okay.
But it doesn't even have to be, how do you put on a hijab? Because I have no idea how to do it with all the little pins. Like, how do you do it? But you have to tell me verbally. Well, you take this part of the fabric and put it over your head. Any little task can be extremely complex and use language. So it just depends on what your task is and what kinds of words and verbs you want them to use. But any task will do. Other speaking promoting activities, using songs and rhythm to practice stress and intonation. We know that the way that certain words are going to be stressed often will completely change, like make it almost incomprehensible. Like if I said, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good example. Put your water on the tabol. You'd be like, what? What is a tabol? Right? Oh, table. Okay, so like putting your water on the table. But English stress is very confusing. So clapping or using something to show where the stress is. Sometimes when I write a word, I put a big ball above the most stressed syllable. October, right? Like
That's the thing I really struggle with. I struggle with recognizing
Well, your
where
stress
the stress is in
it's
the
different.
word. And it's probably
That's part of the
different,
problem.
Yeah. But it's like I'm
Yeah.
saying a word, I can't hear it in the words I'm saying.
Mhm.
So,
Now, I can hear it in the words you're saying.
Yeah.
You do it.
Yeah.
yes.
Maybe that would be something where you and Mary could work together. She says it, and as she's talking, you're showing where the stress is. Could you hear it when someone else is talking, or just
I don't know, I guess.
it might be an interesting thing to practice?
I hear it when she's
Yeah.
talking, because it
Yeah,
always
I hear
makes me
it.
laugh.
Oh, it's clear.
Contribute.
Like when I teach the months, I have them. Hi, baby. I have them clap on the syllable.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July. That one trips everybody up because it's not July, it's July, right? And so having them clap where it goes gives them that kind of like it goes in, right? The students don't even get my name. They always say Allison, instead of Allison, right? So
Okay.
practicing even just with names, just practicing stress through clapping, through songs, through music. Other speaking activities you can do. You can have, stressing syllables. You can have one student make a statement. It could be any statement, like, I think hummus is the best food in the world, or any kind of opinion. And then have the other students have a reaction to that opinion, but all of their reactions have to be different. I'm sorry, love. So the first person might be like, no, it's not. And that counts as a valid reaction. Or I think that, Baba Ganoush is better. Right? So that's a good thing that you can do because the students can produce as much as they're able as long as they have a reaction. So it accounts for your different levels in your class as long as they don't do the same reaction as someone else. Okay? You could play, how many of you guys have played Taboo, that game?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, love. Taboo is a game where you have a word that you're trying to get your teammates to say, but you can't say the words that are below it. Now, the actual Taboo game would probably be too difficult, but you could modify it like, describe a table without saying legs, right? Just giving them one word they can't say and seeing if their classmates can guess what the object is. We're just trying to get them to talk and be creative and find new ways to say things. If you think about it, it's something that you do all the time. If you can't remember the word or something, it's like, go put that coffee mug on that long, skinny table behind the couch instead of saying credenza, right? So we do that too. We use other words to describe things without using the actual word. You can have your students do that as well because it's a good coping mechanism. It's a good coping mechanism if they don't know the word.
Yeah, a friend, when I was on holiday, a friend and I were at the seaside and we could see, neither of us could think what the word is. We're looking and going, oh, look at that. It's on the water like a motorbike. It's like it's a jet ski. And it was like days before we both went, jet ski! And we both started going, but it's like that. Why can we not think of the word? It's like a motorbike and it's on the water. So.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But we still all know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's something we want our students to be able to do. If they don't know the vocabulary word, it doesn't mean they give up and stop talking, right? We want to give them practice to find new circuits and ways to get to where they want to go, communication-wise. Assigning students to a debate, having students pantomime. There's 1,000 ways you can get your students to talk. That isn't just read this thing from the book or practice this thing. All right. I have one more section. Are we good? Okay. All right. And this comes back to Susan's main question, which is, what is authentic communication? How do I make it happen in my class? So teachers will know the think, pair, share activity. But for those of you who aren't public educators, think, pair, share goes like this. So you have a topic, and each of you individually, so you can either turn this little circle your words paper over, or if you have paper, write it down. And you make a list by yourself of all the things you can think of to answer my question. Then after a little bit of time goes by, you pair. So you get with your neighbor, and you share your answers, and together you make a list that's longer than the list you had at first. Right? So it's a way to collaborate it's a way to think on your own and get started, and a way to collaborate so you can achieve more with your neighbor. Right? And so I'd like you guys to do a think, pair, share for ways you can use authentic materials and communication in your classroom. So what Susan was talking about with bringing in kitchen stuff, right, is one example. So I'd like you guys to do for let's say 2 or 3 minutes, go ahead and write down as many different types of authentic materials and objects and things you could bring into your room for authentic communication as you can, and then we'll pair and share. Hi, baby. So bringing in real life objects, money for shopping, fruit for weight, clothing for sizes, etc., right? Those are all kind of one concept in my mind. Bringing in newspapers and magazines, and maps. Practicing phone etiquette. So either maybe even calling, having them call you, like your homework is to call me, right? That would be a really good way to practice phone etiquette. Using simple video clips from news, TV, internet, YouTube. Bringing guests or recording authentic conversations of friends and family. You could even, I've done this where I went to church, and after church I was like, hey kids, come together, talk about blah, 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 and recorded them talking. Using real forms and documents in class. I know that this won't really be for level 0, but everybody up, practicing whether it's a medical form, a job application, any type of official form. Practicing role plays, and especially having the students create their own dialogue so that they're agents in that authentic communication. Cultural exchanges, describing holidays and events, how to cook certain foods, bringing wedding photos, your own, theirs, videos, right? Anything that is authentic. Things that aren't authentic are textbook dialogues and CDs. Children's books are an iffy one. Some of them can be valuable, and some of them, like Dr. Seuss, is filled with nonsense that's not going to be super helpful. Kind of depends on the book. We want to make sure that, children's books are great if they have kids and they're going to be reading it to their kids, then that's an authentic task. But otherwise, we don't normally read children's books, right? Unless we're reading them to our kids.
I did when I was librarian at Bristol, I had a big section of adult literacy books, and you need adult literacy books. They need to be adult books, not
Right.
we're going to read. Who wants to read children's books if you're an adult, unless you have to
Unless-
read children's books.
I mean, it depends. Some children's books will work, but we just want to be careful to not over-childify
Yeah.
our, that's not a word, but over-childify our classrooms, right? Because they're adults.
Another thing was helping them model. I modeled first and then they did it, how to talk to their apartment manager office.
Yes.
Because
Yep.
they have a lot of issues with that stuff.
You're
so-
bringing me to my last point, but before I do that, does anybody want to share any other great things that they came up with? That I did not?
Shoes. My students are very interested in my shoes. They ask me every
It's
day.
true.
Yes.
Okay.
Sandals, tennis shoes, sneakers, high heels, boots.
I guess there's a
different
lot of
kinds of
kinds of
boots.
shoes.
When we discussed clothes, and Stephen was teaching your class, and I said, Stephen, man, shoes, it's just shoes. That's all they. I said, here we're women, and we went through the whole range of
And then
sandals, pumps,
you can
high
go into
heels.
where do you wear
I
this
can
shoe?
use that
Yes, that's a
instruction.
good point.
Yes.
The other thing is makeup. When we did
yeah.
the body, we actually spent more time discussing makeup.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
got
what
a
do you
fun
call
range.
What do you call this?
What do you call this? And
yeah.
the range of verbs apply.
Yes,
You
and
know,
so
just-
bringing makeup in, because we do the first aid thing and bring those in, but actually bringing some makeup in so we can say, this is mascara because that for me.
Hairbrush.
They knew what
Yes.
it's, they know what they want, they don't know the word for it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good point.
And they want to know what we use as well.
Yeah.
Because they want to know what they can get in the shop. When I moved here, I want to know what I could buy here, not what I could have bought back in England.
Right.
It's no use to me.
I
I
had-
couldn't get it.
I think Amina came up to me and she was like, is this for day or night? You
Yes.
know, like,
Yeah.
just, I mean, that's a practical question.
Yes.
I think one of the things I'd like to talk about briefly was possibly expressing a simple and not too incendiary political opinion,
Most definitely.
and asking for responses.
That could definitely go with news, you know, reading a short article or watching a short video clip and then discussing it, definitely. I mean, we do want to be careful to never re-traumatize somebody or bring up something that could
To be sure.
worrisome, but yeah, I'd say a lot of political stuff. It's interesting to learn what they think.
There was one time in our class when a phone went off and one of the students stood up and said, "Excuse me," and left the room.
Hey,
And we called it out and said, "That was so polite. That was wonderful."
yes.
If your phone should ring, you say, "Excuse me," and you leave.
Right.
It changed everything. It was, "Oh, excuse me." And then it was like, we should have said this at the beginning.
I've never said that before in any sort of like welcome to the school training.
Yes.
All right. So before we go, what I tried to do for you, and this is a work in progress, and I'm sorry that it's not finished, is when we think about the ways that we assess our students, we're not really giving them tests. They're not getting grades. So how do we know if they're ready for the next level? The way that we know they're ready is if they can complete the types of tasks that are appropriate to your level. Can they ask and answer, "How are you?" Can they give advice to a friend and say, "You should go to the doctor"? Can they, and this is where I had problems over here because I haven't taught y'all's levels, but can they do these things that are communication based, right? Can they do these things? If they can, then they are ready. So what I tried to do using the scopes and sequences from your books that Felicia graciously emailed to me is make a list of tasks, one task per unit. Like if they could finish this unit and they could just do X, then they would be good. And that is the framework through which I would like you to see your book, is as an orderly set of tasks that we want them to be able to do in the real world. I will warn you in advance, I had the most success over here because I've taught these levels and I'm most familiar with them. With only the scope and sequence, I wasn't able to get quite so far. But with everybody, I love your feedback over what you think the students should be able to do. and communicate. And that, you know, this term, or maybe even before the term even starts, I've created a list of those tasks for each of you. And I'd like you to look at it. You can look at it and go, Allison's crazy. My students can't do this, or this is too easy, or this is not relevant to their lives. You know your students, right?
But it might be a jumping off point.
But it's a exactly. It's a jumping off point for you guys to get started through thinking in this framework of what is the authentic communication I want my students to do before they leave my class, right? And so I'll give those to you guys, and we won't do it here. You can just kind of mull on it as you get ready to go back. And you can email me and say like, hey Allison, your list is great. Or, this sucks, like, can I meet with you and redo it? Or these are some suggestions I've made, or however you want to approach me with it. It will not hurt my feelings if you don't like it, okay? But I was just trying to think through what are the things I want these students to be able to do at the end of each level. I tried to not use any grammatical terms, and I tried to not, say like, students will speak in the past tense, okay? I tried to make it more like, students will discuss their life history, right? That's what we want them to be able to do. We want them to be able to say, when I was 5, I did this, and then I moved to the United States in 2014, or whatever, right? That's what we want. We want them to be able to talk about themselves and ask. I know, honey, we're done. So, I will give you these goals. I included literacy goals, but those are really more for the lower levels.
Are we going to require that they have a book? Well, are they really going to need that?
Yeah, you would still be using, we haven't quite progressed enough to move away from the book. You're still using the book. You're just focusing in the book on the communication task for each unit.
So we're still using the curriculum, the framework,
Right, because
and the
otherwise,
basis
I mean,
for
I can't reinvent
But I
the
can
wheel.
do that from my book. Do they need that book? And I can make homework,
If you would like to do that, the reason I would not want to not require the book is because you have to have something. And if you would like to, since you have free time, if you would like to create your own materials, you are welcome to do that. But I would talk with Felicia because she's the one that's in charge of all of that.
Okay.
So here is the level 0 list of tasks. Level 1, level 2. For level 2, for example, says request home repairs and make polite complaints. Right?
Yeah.
So look at these. Yours for Unit 9, I kind of gave up trying to figure out what they wanted, so you'll have to come up with your own for that one. But everything else, hopefully these are the kinds of things that you will be teaching your students and helping them achieve. And if you look at a unit and you're like, there is nothing in this unit that my students need to be able to do, skip it.
Yeah.
Trash it.
Well, we're going to have to anyway because we just don't have enough
This
time.
is how we figure out what the things are we need to trash. If it does not directly apply to something that a student can go out and do in the real world, then it is not important for us.
Okay.
Because we are not trying to give them an academic overview. We are trying to give them what they need to progress. So,
Yes.
I think that is everything, and I appreciate your patience.
So Alice, yeah,
Yes.
that's excellent. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Totally.
How will you be available? Are you going to be on site at all?
So I'm going to be on site in 2 weeks for the orientation days.
Yep.
And I'm going to be coming on the days that Emily, I don't remember which classes are here which days, but I was planning on coming for the first couple weeks to help
I
Emily
think it's
and
Monday,
get her.
Wednesday, or the
Yeah,
lower
so
class.
those I'll be here getting over the hump, and I would be more than happy to come on whichever the other days are, the Tuesday, Thursday days, to help anybody at any time. I can come with Julian anytime. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just not going to be here every day.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you go over the days of the classes?
I don't know. Felicia can.
Yes, it's very confusing.
Thank you again, Allison. Let's give her a hand.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.